Shabbat everyone. This is Grandpa Jim. I've got a message that maybe you have never heard. Big part of the world has not heard about this message. I'll show you the book I'm taking it from. I'll be doing a lot of reading. United States and Britain in Prophecy. It was written by Herbert Armstrong quite a few years ago. It's a pretty long subject, and I'll be doing quite a bit of reading. But bear with me, and you can get your own book from lcg.org and read the rest of it, because I'm only going to be able to cover a small bit, a thumbnail sketch of it. I'm going to start out by reading the introduction. A staggering turn in world events is due to erupt in the next few years. It will involve violently the United States, Britain, Western Europe, the Middle East. It is already rather late for the free world to come awake to the real meaning behind current world events. Why do not the world leaders see what is coming? Why are the world's best minds unseeing the heads of state, scientists, educators, editors, news analysts, bankers, industrialists, leaders in business and commerce? They are totally unaware. Why? Because they don't know the Bible, basically. But it's a long subject. It's a subject that's not very well known. Because they have been falsely educated and deceived into closing their minds to the great causes behind world events and trends. The world has been falsely educated to ignore causes and deal with effects. Yet all the world's problems and ills are simply a matter of cause and effect. There is a cause that has produced the strife and the war, the poverty, the wretchedness, the inequality, the crime, the disease, the mental ills, but the leaders do not know. Now remember, folks, this book was written maybe in the 70s, I don't know. So he was way ahead of his time on this book. And I'll give you a thumbnail idea of what it's about. It's about Israel and where Israel is today. Yeshua came to the lost 10 tribes of Israel. The tribe over in the land that they call Israel, and they're part of Israel, but they're not all of Israel. Judah is one tribe. It's Judah, Benjamin, and another one, and they broke away from Israel back in Rehoboam's time, Solomon's son's time, and they've never come together since. So this is going to try to show you what has happened to them. World explosion to erupt. The world's leaders are the educated of the world, but they were not educated in the basic truths, the foundations of right knowledge. The most necessary knowledge is not being taught. They do not know what man is or why. They know nothing of the purpose of the meaning of life. They were not taught to distinguish the true values from the false. They did not learn the real causes, the way to peace, to happiness, universal abundance, nor the cause of war, unhappiness, inequality, world chaos. They know nothing of the purpose being worked out here below. Consequently, they guide humanity on a course in conflict with that purpose, wreaking havoc upon a distressed, suffering, unhappy mankind. Lacking knowledge of the way to peace, the world does not have peace. Leaders talk of peace. They profess to work for peace. They cry out for peace, while they have approval and blind acceptance to the way that produces war. Joshua says that they say peace, peace, and there is no peace. This world has simply been going the wrong way. this world is giving assent to the conferring civilization's acceptance on the ways that are the cause of all the world's ills. And now we are fast approaching the final grand smash explosion that is going to stagger the mind of man beyond the bounds of sanity. Forces are at work today on plans, programs, conspiracies, movements, and that soon will erupt into a world explosion of violence and chaos such as never has happened before and never will again. Joshua said that if he didn't cut it short, that all men would be killed off the earth. The earth would be wiped off. People would be wiped off of the earth. Maybe blow it out of orbit. I don't know. You see, it's a world explosion of violence, chaos, such as never has happened before and never will again. Men today are tampering with forces of nature. They lack the prudence, knowledge, and ability to and wisdom to control. Is that an understatement? Point number 2, I've got 15 points, so it'll take a little while. The lost master key that has been found. This may sound incredible, but it is true. Editors, newscasters, foreign correspondents do not understand the real meaning of the world news they report and analyze and discuss. Heads of governments are utterly unaware of the true significance of the very world-shaking events with which they deal. They have no conception of where these events are leading. Incredible, perhaps, but true. Winston Churchill declared before the United States Congress, he must indeed have a blind soul who cannot see that some great purpose and design is being worked out here below, of which we have the honor to be the faithful servants. But he did not understand that purpose. That great purpose long ago was master planned by the mastermind of the universe. There is a purpose. It is true, though almost totally unrealized, mankind has been put on the earth for a purpose, and the maker of mankind sent along with the human product of his making an instruction book, to reveal the purpose and to guide man in happy, enjoyable, fulfilling it. But the human race has rejected the revelation and the guidance and has preferred to stumble on in the dark of their own futile reasonings, trying the same thing over and over that has failed and thinking they can make it work. About 1/3 of the instruction book is devoted to basic prophecy, education, revealing to man's the necessary foundational knowledge, otherwise undiscoverable, unknowable, knowledge of what man is and why he is, where his destiny may lead, now to reach it and live happily along the way. Revealing knowledge of the true values is distinguished from the false. Knowledge of the way to peace, happiness, abundant well-being, in other words, the most necessary of all knowledge, the foundation on which to build discoverable knowledge. Another approximate third of the book is devoted to history, to his events, speaking of the Bible, of course. To those events and experiences fulfilling the master plan during the first 4 millennia of man's mortal sojourn as examples of our admonition and guidance today. And then approximately a third grasp this. An entire third might be less than that. I think later on he said maybe 10% might understand it. The entire third of our master's revelation to mankind is devoted to prophecy, writing the history of future events before they occur. Only he can do that. Human beings can't do that. They try, they contact the dead or wizards or whatever, but it's not realistic. These foretold future events reveals the great purpose being finally worked out, being brought to its completion. Prophecies closed until now. One might ask, were not biblical prophecies closed and sealed? Indeed, they were until now, and even now they have been can be understood only by those who possess the master key to unlock them. But we have reached the approximate end of 6,000 years of biblical history. We have reached the end of an age. We are entering right now the world crisis at the close of the present civilization. We face today conditions such as the world never before has witnessed. Today, the big problem is the stark question of survival, even more so today than it was when Mr. Armstrong wrote this book. For the first time in world history, the weapons of mass destruction exist which can erase all life from the earth. Chiefs of governments and world-famous scientists have been saying publicly, we must adjust to living in fear of human annihilation with no solution in sight. That's pretty bleak, isn't it? To those prejudiциally cynical toward the Bible, I say it is now your only hope. Science offers no solutions. The politicians and head of governments have no answers. In the Bible alone, you will find the answers, the advanced news of what is now certain to occur, and occur it will before mankind blasts itself out of existence. Yeshua said he would stop it just before it happened, so that's a little bit, that's some good news. But another objector might ask, are not most of the prophecies outdated Old Testament writings addressed only to the ancient nation of Israel, of no concern to us in our day, our time? And the answer is emphatically no. These scintillating dynamic prophecies were most of them never given to ancient Israel. In fact, Israel was in captivity by the time a lot of these prophecies were given. The pivotal book. The plain truth is these prophecies were written for our people of our time and for no previous people or time. They pertain to world conditions of today and could not have been understood until today. One of the very, very pivotal books of prophecy is the book of Daniel. Actually, the prophet Daniel was not the author of the book, known by his name. The living Elohim was its author. The message was transmitted to Daniel by Yahweh's angel. Daniel put to writing to be preserved until our time what he heard. At the very close of this book, Daniel wrote, I heard, but I understood not. Then I said, O my Elohim, what shall be the end of these things? And he said, Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed and sealed till the time of the end. And none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. Daniel 12, 8 through 10. So the prophecies of Daniel were closed, sealed, and locked up until now. This is definitely the time of the end. We don't know how much more to the end, but it's approaching that. But today we are living in the time of the end. Today the wise do understand, but who are the wise? Only those who fear and obey Elohim, who have the master key to unlock the unlocked up prophecies. Yahweh says, the fear of the eternal is the beginning of wisdom. A good understanding have all they that do his commandments. Do his what? You heard it, the commandments. Psalms 111, verse 10. And even most professing Christians refuse utterly to do that. No wonder they can't understand. And don't forget the specific key that unlocks these closed doors of prophecy is a definite knowledge of the true identity of America and the British nations as they are mentioned in these prophecies. Like I said, very few understand this. This was very insightful many, many years ago. It was a gift from Yahweh, not for Old Testament Israel. Daniel's prophecy then was not a message to the Old Testament kingdom of Israel. Now think further. Nor was a prophecy a message for the Old Testament kingdom of Judah. When Daniel wrote, the Jews already were slaves in Babylon. They went there for 70 years for breaking the Sabbath, and the land Sabbath especially. Daniel was one of the brilliant young princes of Judah, specially chosen for service in the king's palace in Babylon, Daniel 1, 3-6. Daniel's strenuous duties in the Gentile king's service did not allow him to deliver this closed and sealed message to the scattered Jewish slaves. In this condition of slavery, the Jews had no system of religious meetings, no priesthood. There was no such thing as a printing press, and no way to print and distribute literature. And beside, the prophecy was closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Our time now, the book of Daniel, was not a message for the Jews of Old Testament. Like I say, I'm skipping through this because it's a fairly long book. But it's pretty self-explanatory. National greatness promised Israel, yet the Jews never received it. Why? That's something that's not understood. Prior to World War II, American British people had acquired more than 2/3 of the cultivated resources and wealth of the world. Yet, astonishing wonder though it be, we acquired nearly all of it rather suddenly since the year 1800. Never in all history did anything like this occur. Never did any people or nation spread out and grow so suddenly and rapidly into such a magnitude of national power. It is said that the British Commonwealth, the sun never set on it because it was scattered all around the globe. And as we'll get into a little later, Britain is one of Joseph's sons, and we'll explain this a little bit better a little bit later on. And Manasseh and Ephraim were Joseph's sons, and Jacob conferred his blessings on him and actually adopted them. So this is what we're talking about here. Yet we are beholding before our very eyes the diminishing and evaporating of this national greatness, wealth, and power, especially in the last few years. In the great case of Britain, it is disintegrating even more rapidly than it developed. Britain has been almost overnight stripped of her colonies and her positions, source of her wealth, and reduced to a second-rate and a third-rate power. Why? There is a reason. It is bound up with the history and the divine promises pertaining to Israel, promises that never yet inherited by the Jewish people, and now, unless people in the government of the United States will heed and take immediate and drastic action, American nation is slated to go down even more suddenly to utter ignominy and loss of national wealth and greatness. We recently have had a reprieve with a lot of people praying about it. Yahweh said, if my people is called by my name will pray and from heaven I will hear and answer their prayer and heal their land. It's not a permanent healing that we're going to have here, but I think we're going to have a period of time, which is a blessing that the message can go out and give people a chance to reconsider where they're at in life. The American nation is slated to go down even more suddenly to utter ignorance, ignominy, and the loss of national wealth, greatness, and power for the same reason. It behooves us without delay to quickly review that history and open our eyes to the divine promises and warnings almost wholly unrealized by our people. It is all connected with the generally ignored plan and simple Bible story that leads to knowledge of our incredible ancestry and modern prophetic identity. And it is the most amazing and fantastic story you'll ever read. Stranger than fiction, yet it is true. It is stranger than fiction. Why do we have Israel's Bible? Millennia ago, this same national greatness, wealth, and power was promised by the Almighty to Abraham, yet few have ever noticed this astonishing fact in Scripture. We must realize if we would understand a particular fact. The Holy Bible is a practical, particular book of definitive nationality, definitive nationality, the children of Israel. It is undeniable. Its history from Genesis to Revelation is primarily the history of one nation or people, the Israelites. There, I want to remind you again that there was 12 tribes of Israel, and because Rehoboam would not lower the taxes, Jeroboam took 10 of the tribes and broke away from Judah and never did rejoin. It's going to come together later on when Yeshua returns, but not yet. Other nations are mentioned only insofar as they come into contact with Israel. All it is, Yahweh said that Israel is his chosen people, not because of them being greater than other nations or better than other nations. It's because Abraham's obedience to him and willing to offer his own son in order to do what Yahweh asked him to do. All its prophecy, too, pertains primarily to this people of Israel and to other nations only so far as they come in contact with Israel. The Bible tells of these Israelites and their Elohim. It was inspired by the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, committed to writing through Israelites exclusively and preserved until after the New Testament was written by these Israelites. In its sacred passage, we read that all the promises and the covenants of Yahweh, all the sonship and the glory belong solely to Israel. Romans 9, verse 4. We use the whole Bible, not just part of it. Yet we must face the astonishing fact that our white English-speaking people, not the Jews, have inherited the national and physical phase of those promises. How could this have happened? The Bible is an Israelitish book, preeminently of and for the Israelitish nationality, inspired by their Elohim through their prophets. It is not indeed strange that we English-speaking people are today the greatest believers and exponents of this book of the Hebrew people. That of all nations, we are the chief worshippers of Israel's Elohim and Israel's Messiah in name and in form, if not in truth and in deed. The more these facts are realized, the more apparent it becomes that a full knowledge of these Israelites is necessary to a right understanding of the Holy Bible, which is chiefly concerned with them as a people. And this knowledge becomes important, for we are to understand the present status of American Britain's people in the world. And the relation to unprecedented world conditions at this fateful hour. Let us remember as we approach this uh, fascinating story that the Bible is concerned uh, with the material and fleshly and literal, racial and national, as well as spiritual. Let us not spiritualize away national things nor nationalize spiritual things. Let us understand the sacred word of Yahweh. The nation began with one man. Before the days of Moses, there was no nation on earth known as Yahweh's particular nation. Prior to Moses, there was no written word of Yahweh. No inspired scriptures, no Holy Bible. Think of it. For more than 2,500 years, 2.5 millennia, that's 2,500 years, mankind existed without any written revelation from Yahweh. The only historic record of Yahweh's dealing with mankind prior to Israel is the revealed history of the Bible. And even more astonishingly, only the first 11 of the 50 chapters of Genesis are devoted to the entire history of the world prior to Abraham, father of the Israelites. Surprising? Question mark. Only the first 11 chapters of the very first book of the Bible are used to record for us the history of the first approximately 2,000 years, and that was before the flood. The flood occurred about 2,000 years after creation, more than 1/3 of its entire span. Yahweh began this world with just one man, Adam. Whatever Yahweh does through human agency must start the smallest, like a grain of mustard seed, and grow big. The first man Yahweh communicated directly and personally with. Yahweh revealed all essential knowledge and otherwise inaccessible to the human mind. The basic essential of all knowledge: what is man? Why is he here? What's the purpose of life? Why is the way of life that will produce health, prosperity, happiness, and joy? What is man's end, his destiny? Yahweh revealed this basis of all knowledge to the first man, Adam. To Adam, Yahweh revealed himself, and the eternal Creator ruler of the earth and all the universe. Yahweh revealed to Adam that he was unlike animals, made in the form and shape of Yahweh, with powers of mind possessed by no other physical creature, with the potential through free choice of developing the very character of Yahweh and of inheriting eternal life in the kingdom of Yahweh. To Adam, hang on a minute. Got to go to the next part. I'm not doing the whole book, like I said. Yahweh revealed the way of life that would result in everything man desires: peace, enjoyable life, happiness, abundance, well-being. To produce these blessings, to be the cause of such desired effects, Yahweh had set in motion his inexorable spiritual law. But Adam listened to Satan and leaned to his own human understanding. He disobeyed Yahweh and rejected the way to every desired result and set out on the human source of greed and vanity. Let's understand right here that Adam was giving the deed to the world. He turned it over to Satan, to Hasatan, when he disobeyed Yahweh and obeyed Hasatan rather than he had a Elohim in front of Yahweh, and it was Hasatan. And Joshua is going to come back and take that back. He defeated Satan after the 40 days and 40 nights fast in the wilderness, when Satan tried to get him to bow down to him. He says, "Get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship Yahweh your Elohim, and him only shall you serve." And that's what Adam should have done, and he would have had access to the tree of life then. but that tree of life is going to be given again. I've given that in other messages. Mankind spurns Yahweh's way. As men began to multiply on earth, Adam's sons followed in his Satan-inspired course of human nature. Prior to Abraham, only three are mentioned as accepting Yahweh's way of life. Only three during more than a third of the world span of history of mankind. Abel was called righteous. Enoch walked with Elohim, and Noah was a preacher of righteousness, which is simply obedience to Yahweh's government. Psalms 119, verse 172. Aside from these three, and possibly Shem, there is no record that any man prior to Abraham yielded to the rule of the Eternal. By the time of Abraham, men had lost all the knowledge of the true Creator ruler. His revelation of his purpose and the way of Elohim to peace and happiness and to eternal life. Man pursued his own ways and devices, walking contrarily to the spiritual laws of Yahweh. Sin and violence filled the earth. That's why it was destroyed the first time. Yahweh couldn't stand it anymore. It was totally given over to evil. And Yahweh will not permit a nation to continue on like that. Many nations have gone down for that same reasons. Worshipping demons. Dual purpose to Abraham. Dual promises to Abraham. Few have realized it, but a duality runs all the way through the plan of Yahweh in working out his purpose here below. There was the first Adam, material and carnal, and there is Messiah, the second Adam, spiritual and divine. There was the old covenant, purely material and temporal, and there is the new covenant, spiritual and eternal. Elohim made man mortal. The separation of birthright and scepter. This is where area comes in that I don't think even the land of Israel, so-called, they are Israel, but only a part of Israel. They're Judah, they're Jews, of which Joshua was a tribe, and this is going to describe that. Now we come to the most vital distinction, and a bit of the Bible truth known to but a very few indeed, have ever noticed that the promise to Abraham were twofold. But the Bible itself makes sharp distinctions between the two phases of the promises. The spiritual promise, the promise of the one seed, Messiah, and the salvation through him, the Bible calls the scepter. But the material and national promises relating to many nations, national wealth and prosperity, and power and possessions of the Holy Land, the Bible calls the birthright. That's a physical blessing. We'll understand that a little bit more here as we go. Who got that? I gave you a hint to it. We have seen how both sets of promises, right of birth and gift of grace, were unconditionally made by Yahweh to Abraham. It was going to happen no matter what Israel did. I mean, Israel was given the blessing and cursing chapter, and if you obey, you receive the blessings. If you disobey, you receive the curses. And that's what we're under today, is the curses. Both the birthright and the scepter were repromised by the Eternal to Isaac and Jacob. But the fact that should open our eyes as a joyous truth newly discovered is that from that point, these two sets of promises became separated. The scepter promise of the kingly line culminating in Messiah and of grace through him were handed to Judah, the son of Jacob and father of all the Jews. But the astonishing truth is that the birth promises were not given to the Jews. That's pretty shocking. Well, you can look and see the difference. It's quite evident. Let that be repeated. Realize this. The birthright promises were never given to the Jews. Turn to these passages, read them in your own Bible. The scepter will not depart from Judah, Genesis 49:10. But the birthright was Joseph's, 1 Chronicle 5, verse 2. Of course, it is well understood that the scepter went to Judah and was handed down through the Jews. King David was of the tribe of Judah. All succeeding kings of David's dynasty were of the house of David, tribe of Judah. Yahshua, Messiah, was born of this house, of David and the tribe of Judah. Another eye-opening truth, completely unrealized by most people today, is the fact that only a part of the children of Israel were Jews. And I've covered that a little bit. Read that little understood fact again. The full explanation and proof of this must be reserved for chapter 6. Only those of the three tribes of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi were Jews. While all the Jews are Israelites, most Israelites are not Jews. So understand the birthright promise did not pass on to the Jews, but the scepter, the promise of Messiah and of grace, was passed on to the Jews. Salvation, Yahshua said, is of the Jews. John 4:22. It's that Yahshua was a Jew, and he had no thing that drew us to him, no visual beauty that drew us to him. He wasn't comely, as the Bible says. The gospel of Messiah, wrote Paul, is the power of Elohim unto salvation, and to everyone that believes, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek. Romans 1:16. The promise of grace were handed down through Judah. They've done a pretty good job of keeping up with it. That's why we have the scriptures today, is because the scribes kept it translated. The scrolls was all they had, and they would wear out, even made of animal skin. But the promise which the Bible terms the birthright had not been understood at all. Few have ever noted that Yahweh made any promise to Abraham other than the scepter. For now, what is in the Bible? Birthright never given to the Jews. Fewer still have understood that this great national material promises were never given to the Jews, and it's stating it over and over because it's such shocking. It's something that we haven't understood. The astonishing and vital fact that many have overlooked is the birthright is Joseph's. And as we will see later, neither Joseph nor his descendants were Jews. Astounding as that may be, it's true. This knowledge about the birthright is the pivot of this entire truth, which will prove the key to the understanding of all prophecy. It is of supreme importance that you get this clearly in your mind. There's a lot that I'm having to go over for sake of time. So if you want to get the whole picture, you'll need to get this book from lcg.org. It's a free book, if I didn't mention it before. Grace requires conditions. I think I'll skip down to what the birthright conferred rather than go into that one. We already touched on that. What the birthright conferred. Just what special material inheritance was passed on by the birthright, few have understood. Yet it conferred the richest and most valuable material inheritance ever passed from father to son, the most colossal wealth and power ever amassed by man or empire. The magnitude of this birthright is staggering. It includes all of the first phase of Yahweh's tremendous promise to Abraham. This legacy guaranteed on the authority of Yahweh Almighty, unconditionally, multi-indigenous population, untold wealth and material resources, national greatness, and world power. Not only had Yahweh promised that a world dominant nation and company or commonwealth of nations whose people descended from Abraham would be as prosperous as the grains of the sands of the sea, populous that is, as the grains of the sand of the sea, as the stars in the multitude. Not only did he promise they should possess the gate, Fenton translates gates of the enemy, which alone signifies world dominance, and the power by the birthright, finally include vast material wealth. Gates are also known as waterways, choke points that ships have to go through. As you can see, that's being hampered today by some evil people. Not going to get into that. The birthright finally included vast material wealth and unlimited national resources. That was made plain in the blessing given to Jacob, as well as we will soon see. We're bypassing big chunks of this book, but it has to be done. You can only find it by getting your own copy. Israel's new land. We are ready now to search out the actual location of the lost tribes of the outcast house of Israel. We know they exist today as a nation and a company of nations, powerful, looked upon as Gentiles, and when we find them, we will find the throne of David. Many passages of prophecy will tell of these people in these latter days. Prophecy is not to be understood until this time of the end. Prophecies containing a message to be carried to these people by those to whom Yahweh reveals it. Joshua said he came to the lost 10 tribes of Israel and to nobody else. He refused to reveal it to Gentiles at that time. He did to one Gentile woman, but she was the only one at the well that he told her that he was the Messiah. And she was the only one he revealed to. He kept it a secret, because if Satan had known it, he wouldn't have had him crucified. The prophet Amos wrote in the days of the 13th of the 19th kings of the house of Israel, Amos 1:1, "Behold, the eyes of Yahweh Elohim are up on the sinful nation, house of Israel. Judah had not yet sinned, and I will destroy it, the kingdom or government, not the people, from off the face of the earth. For lo, I will command, and I will sift the house of Israel among all nations, like as corn is sifted in the sieve. Yet shall not the least grain fall upon the earth." He can shift you people through nations and still continue to know who you are and bring you back to the right place, and that's going to happen. I've mentioned this in another message. The plan of salvation and is on the same screen, and also the wonderful world tomorrow. Amos 9:8-9, that was. This prophecy usually is applied to the scattered condition of the Jews, but it has nothing to do with the Jews or the house of Judah, but refers to the 10 tribes of Israel, driven to Assyrian captivity. That was Nineveh back then, that Jonah went to preach to. That was the capital of Assyria. There was a city-state is actually what it was. But it has nothing to do with the Jews or the house of Judah, but refers to the 10 tribes of Israel. Driven to the Assyrian captivity, then migrated from there and scattered among the nations before the Jews were taken to Babylon. This prophecy says that Israel, not Judah, was to be sifted through other nations. These Israelites losing their identity, yet Elohim has protected and kept them. yet shall not the least grain fall upon the earth. Joshua sent out the 70 to the lost tribe of the house of Israel. So Joshua and disciples knew where they were in that part of the world. There were other parts of the world too, because they were over 2 million strong when they came out of Egypt. And this is hundreds of years, if not thousands of years later, when he was on the earth. Lost Israel located. Without further suspense, let us see where prophecy locates these birthright holders now possessing the throne of David and having received earth's richest national blessings. Remember, they are distinguished from Judah, the Jews, by various names: Ephraim, Joseph, Jacob, Rachel, and the mother of Joseph, Samaria, their former home, and Israel. According to Hosea 2:12, Ephraim followed after the east wind, and east wind travels west. Ephraim must have gone west from Assyria when the Eternal swore to David that he would perpetuate his throne. He said, I will set his hand, the scepter, also in the sea. Psalms 89:25. The throne is to be set, planted in the sea. In those days, the house of Judah shall walk with the house of Israel, margin to the house of Israel, and they shall come together out of the land of the north to the land that I have given for an inheritance unto their fathers. They're going to be brought back together at Joshua's return. He said he calls them sticks. The two sticks, the house of Israel and the house of Judah, are two separate nations, sets of nations, and they're going to be brought back together in his hand. At the future Exodus, at Messiah's coming, they are to return to Palestine out of the land of the north. After saying, how shall I give thee up, Ephraim, the Eternal, speaking through Hosea, says, then the children shall tremble from the west, Hosea 11:8 and 10. Again, behold, I will bring them from the north country and gather them from the coasts of the earth, Jeremiah 31:8. This prophecy is for consideration in the latter days, Jeremiah 30:24 and 31 verse 1, and is addressed to Israel, verse 2, 4, and 9 to Ephraim, verse 6 and 9, and Samaria, verse 5. Here is added another hint, the coasts of the earth, verse 8, evidencing they are dominant at sea, indicating they have spread abroad widely and organized. Referring to the house of Israel, not Judah, Isaiah 49:3 and verse 6, Yahweh says, behold, these shall come from the far, and lo, these from the north, and from the west, and these from the land of Sinim. These are Old Testament things. Isaiah 49:12. It says that the next Exodus will be so large that you won't even remember the first Exodus. And that was pretty momentous in itself. So it's going to be huge, because Israel are going into captivity again. In the Hebrew, the language in which this was originally inspired, there is no word for northwest, but this term is designated by the phrase, the north and the west. It means literally the northwest. The Vulgate renders Sinim as Australia or Australia, Australi, or Australia. So we now have the location northwest of Jerusalem, and even spreading around the world. Hence, Israel of the day of Jeremiah's planning of David's throne is located specifically as northwest of Jerusalem and in the sea. Let us locate this land more specifically. The same 49th chapter of Isaiah begins with this: listen, O isles, unto me. The people addressed Israel are called O isles in the first verse, and Israel in the third verse. This term isles or island is sometimes translated coastlands. The 31st chapter of Jeremiah, locating Israel in the north country, says, I am a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. Ephraim actually was the younger of the two sons of Joseph. Jacob crossed his hands, and Joseph was upset about it and tried to cross him back. Jacob was basically blind at that time when he gave the blessing, but he pronounced Ephraim to be a commonwealth of people, the British people. And this is going to touch on that too. I am a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. Hear the word, O ye nations. Ephraim and Manasseh, he declared, is in the isles afar off. Jeremiah 31, 9 through 10. Again, keep silent before me, O islands. Thou, Israel, art my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen. Isaiah 41, verse 1 and 8. In Jeremiah 31:10, the message is to be declared in the isles afar off. The Bible has been taught more from the United States than any other modern nation, and is to be shouted in the chief of the nations. Verse 7, so finally today, as in Jeremiah's day, the house of Israel is in the isles, which are in the sea, the chief of the nations northwest of Jerusalem, the coast dwelling and therefore sea dominant people. Certainly there can be no mistaking that identity. The map of Europe lay in a line due northwest of Jerusalem across the continent of Europe until you come to the island, and then the island in the sea. This line takes you directly to the British Isles. That's Ephraim was the oldest one, and he became a commonwealth of nation. A proof that our white English-speaking people today, Britain and America, are actually the true and birthright tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh, of the lost tribe of Israel. There is so much, so we have space for, but a small portion in this book. Well, see, you know the history of our country, how the people came from Great Britain to settle America, and then we broke away from there because Yahweh was ready to give Manasseh his blessing, and America is actually Manasseh. He's going to be a great nation and have power over his enemies. There's been no other nation as great a military power as the United States and Britain. Britain's Hebrew names. A most interesting fact in Hebrew is the meaning of the names of the British people. The house of Israel is a covenant people. The word for covenant is B-E-R-I-Y-T-H, or Brit. After Gideon's death, Israel followed the false pagan Elohim Baal in Judges 8:33 and 9:4. The word covenant is used as a proper name coupled with the name Baal. This is quoted in the English text, authorized version, without being translated as Baal birth, meaning margin, idol of the covenant. The Hebrew for man is Ish, I-Y-S-H or I-S-H. In English, ending Ish means or belonging to a specific nation or person. In the original Hebrew language, vowels were never given in the spelling, so omitting the word E from birth, but retaining the I in it, anglicized from the form to preserve the Y sound. We have the anglicized Hebrew word for the covenant birth. The Hebrews, however, never pronounced their H's. Many of the Jews even today, in pronouncing the name Shem, shall call it Sem, S-E-M. Incidentally, these ancient Hebrew traits is also modern British traits. So the Hebrew word for covenant would be pronounced in its anglicized form as Brit. And the word for covenant man or covenant people would be simply Brit-ish. Brit being covenant and Ish being man. And so it is mere coincidence. Is it a mere coincidence that the true covenant people today are called the British, and they reside in the British Isles? The house of Israel not only was to lose its identity, but its name, it was to be called by a new name, since they no longer were to know their identity as Israel. You lose your identity when you don't keep the Sabbath. That's what happens. As Yahweh said plainly in Isaiah 62:2, referring to these latter days and to the millennium, to Abraham he said, "In Isaac shall thy seed be called." And this name is repeated in Romans 9:7, the Hebrews 11:18, and Amos 7:16. The Israelites are called the house of Isaac. They were descended from Isaac, and therefore are Isaac's sons. Drop the I from Isaac vowels and are not used in Hebrew spelling. We have the modern name SACS, Saxons, or as we spell it in shorter manner, SAXONS. This is spelled SAAC''S, sons, SONS. Dr. W. Holt Yates says the word Saxons is derived from the sons of Isaac by dropping the prefix I. Many confuse the Anglo-Saxons with the German Old Saxons, who still live in Germany. The German Saxons derive their name from the old High German word Schas, S-A-H-S, meaning sword or knife. These sword-carrying Germans are entirely different people from the Anglo-Saxons who migrated to Britain. We're coming close to a close here. We are Israel. But there's another answer to this argument. The people of the United States and British Commonwealth nations and the nations of Western Europe are in fact the people of the 10 tribes of the house of Israel. That includes the Scandinavian people, they're seafaring people, and Ireland, Scotland. The Jewish people are, in fact, the scepter went into Scotland. There's another book that's out that describes how that Jeremiah took Hezekiah's daughters to Scotland, which later on moved to Great Britain. The Jewish people are the house of Judah. But if the Sabbath is Elohim's sign to identify as people Israel, then why don't our nation keep it today? Well, why do we lose our name, right? The answer to that question is answered to another. Why are the 10 tribes of the house of Israel called the lost tribes? And why do our nations think they are Gentiles? Why don't they know their true identity? Now we have a staggering, startling, surprising truth to reveal. Here's a dumbfounding truth for far stranger than fiction. Here are the facts hidden for centuries, more intriguing than a mystery novel. Why is the Sabbath called disrespectfully, sneeringly, the Jewish Sabbath? Why does the world think all Israelites are Jews and that the Jews are all of Israelites? Here is an astonishing surprise to those who have believed that. The Jews are only a small minority of Israelites. Nowhere in the Bible are any of the 10 tribes of Israel called Jews. The name Jews applies only to the kingdom of Judah. They were descended from Judah. Jews are Israelites, but only a part of these Israelites are Jews. That's a little bit confusing, but if you get the book, you can study it all for yourself, and you can bring it together a little better than I have been able to do here. This is the last portion. And now what the prophecies of the immediate future. The birthright, once we received it, was stupendous, awesome, unequitable, equitable among nations or empires. But what have our peoples done with that awesome blessing? They are still Israelites, even though they themselves knew it not. They were still rebellious, stiff-necked, stubborn, Once the British people and Americans, the lost Israelites, now supposing they are Gentiles, found themselves basking in the pleasant sunshine of such wealth and power. They were less willing than their ancient forefathers to yield to Yahweh and his ways. They felt no need of him now, and it seems few ever turn to Elohim until they find themselves in a desperate need or trouble. But Yahweh had withheld the birthright for 2,520 years, and then because of sin, Israel could have inherited 2,500 years ago, but prophecy had to be fulfilled. And the end time prophecy, it doesn't mention America and Great Britain, but now you know who they are, and it can't be denied. There's no wealthier people on earth than the British in the night, even though it's been greatly diminished. And the pride of our power has been diminished. That was another one of the prophecies that I never read to you. We have the power, but we didn't have any pride in it. And there's nothing any surer than that in just recent years, as you can know without me telling you. After Yahweh withheld the birthright blessing for 2,520 years, and then when the people deserved nothing from Elohim, he suddenly bestowed on us national blessings unparalleled in history. The unconditional promises to Abraham was kept. No longer is Yahweh obligated to his promise to continue our undeserving people in world prestige, wealth, and greatness. Once we had been given such unrivalable position, it was up to us whether we should keep it. I guess there's a little bit more here to read. So now we go back to Leviticus 26. We had previously covered verse 1 through 8. Yahweh said that if all his previous punishments the Israelites would not listen to and obey, he would punish them the duration of the 2,520 years. Then what? If after that 2,520 years of withholding the birthright, our people with the birthright still rebel, Yahweh continues verse 19. Verse 19, and I will break the pride of your power, and I will make your heaven as iron and your earth as brass. Yahweh has already begun that, as I had told you before. Well, that concludes this book. I would recommend it to you again. You can get a free one from lcg.org, United States and Britain in Prophecy. There's a lot in there, a lot more information that you can get. And there's also another booklet that, hold on just a minute, I'll advertise that to you too. Excuse me. Well, I don't have it available, I'm sorry. So I guess I'll end it now. If you get this booklet, you'll get a lot more information. Yahweh bless. Till the next time. Grandpa Jim signing off.